Imagine uncovering a legacy filled with untold stories of strength, resilience, and intrigue. Today, we're diving deep into the Thalsparr Universe, created by none other than Bjorn Leesson, a master storyteller who has captivated readers with his blend of history and adventure. Stay with us as we explore the secrets behind the ruins of Dokkrsdottir and discover the depth of a warrior's journey. You won't want to miss this conversation. Authors like you've never heard them before, only on Books with Bridgetti. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Introducing Books with Bridgetti, a lineup of industry experts, award-winning authors and talented indie authors. Buckle up for an unparalleled journey with us. Meet exceptional authors celebrated globally for their captivating narratives. Our authors craft imaginative stories that stay etched in your mind long after the final page. It's not just stories, it's lingering experiences that stay etched in your mind. Our authors share the inspirations that create mesmerizing page-turning stories. Journeys that embody resilience, that turn setbacks into stepping stones, rejections that spark growth, and hurdles that become a catalyst for creativity. From dramas, mysteries, fantasies, children's stories to reality stories, join us as we delve into the inspiration behind the story, discover how authors breathe life into characters, and meticulously craft plots that keep you turning the page. But wait, there's more. We share stories from indie authors as well as Amazon and New York Times best-selling authors. Get ready for an interview that'll have you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned. Join us only on Books with Bridgetti.
If you have just joined us, then welcome to Books with Bridgetti. Our live stream is made possible by StreamYard, Creative Edge, and BeLive Media. In today's show, we talk to Bjorn Leesson, authors like you've never heard them before, only on Books with Bridgetti. Now, if you've never met our amazing author, Bjorn is from the low country of South Carolina in the United States and has spent his life working in the manufacturing industry. He's always had a wide range of interests, he tells us, including history, writing, and photography. Now, although he has never formally trained as a writer, his passion for storytelling led him to create the Thalsparr Universe, where he shares his amazing tales. His two books, Ruins of the Dokkrsdottir, and I hope I'm not butchering that word, but I will ask him, and Rune of the Renewal are out, and with more stories on the way, he tells us. He also enjoys playing World of Warcraft, and we'll ask him a little bit about that too. So with that, let's ask Bjorn to join me, shall we? Bjorn, welcome to the show. So glad that you are able to join me, and looking forward to hearing more about yourself and your journey as an author. And I'm going to jump right in. What sparked your passion for storytelling, and what made you decide to create the Thalsparr Universe?
That's a very good question. It was a long evolution. I've always liked to write, even like you said in the biography there at the beginning. I've always worked in industry as a profession, but I've always loved to write. And predominantly, it's always been technical writing or nonfiction. And the interest of history, writing nonfiction history and reading about nonfiction history, I also started picking up these little details about the Viking culture, Norse culture. Come to find out later, as genealogy became a thing for me, that I have a lot of Norse background in my genealogy. There's a lot of Norse. And a story popped up I think it's about 10 or 15 years ago. There was a Viking mound found in England from the Viking Age They excavated it. It was a warrior chieftain, a jarl they called him, that was highly respected because of all the grave goods and things. They figured out this person was a very respected warrior, and they assumed it was male because that's what we always imagine, blonde hair, blue eyed, pale skinned Viking male that is Viking. So they kind of did their little bit of investigation and pushed them off to the side. I think that was in the 60s or 70s. But 10 or 15 years ago, they really started to examine the remains closer and come to find out it's a female. So that was a little bit shocking. Nowadays, we kind of more accepting of the idea of a female warrior, axe and sword warrior. That's kind of it's something we can identify with now. But at the time, that wasn't normal. And that sparked in my head, that would make an awesome story to find out about this person. Of course, there's nothing to read about this person. They just found the remains. There wasn't a whole lot of writing to be found about the Viking Age from the Viking Age. So I just started kind of combining a whole bunch of my interests. I combined history, genealogy, and the Norse culture in particular. And I started throwing some supernatural elements in there because I like the paranormal. That's another interest. And just started forming this story around this character I named Myrgjol, which it's pronounced Myrgjol, but it's spelled Myrgjol, which is the Old Norse spelling for that name. And her last name, or her add-on name, I guess you could call it, Dokkrsdottir, which you had that right earlier. It's Dokkrsdottir. It's the Old Norse way they named it paternally. So Dokkrsdottir would be the daughter of the Dokkr. Like my name's Leesson, so I'm the son of Lee. It's the same thing. And what I mentioned earlier about the perception that a Viking is blonde hair, blue eyed, pale skinned, and male, she's the opposite. She's a female, and she's dark skinned because her father was not from. He ended up in Scandinavia in 800s, but he wasn't from Scandinavia. He was from Northern Africa. So he was dark skinned and black haired and dark eyed, and she inherited a lot of his visual traits when she was born. So he was called the Dokkr because was the Old Norse term for dark. He was a dark skinned person in their midst, so they called him the Dokkr, and she became the Dokkrsdottir. So.
Oh my goodness, that is so interesting. Oh my gosh, talk about interesting. You've got a very, very wide range of interests, from history to photography and everything else in between.
Oh, everything's fascinating. Everything's fascinating in some way.
Do all these little bits influence how you write?
Oh, absolutely. Another thing I love is humor. There's a lot of humor in the books as well. It's a very up and down. The whole story itself is a little bit of everything. If when I was first decided I was going to publish this story, I hired an editor named Andrea Flores, wonderful editor. Wanted to pitch her real quick. She said, "What do you envision? What genre do you envision this story being in?" I said, "I have no idea because it's got a little bit of everything in it. If you take a little sprinkling of all of life, that's what's in the book." Because I wanted to make it as realistic as possible. You think about, I'm not picking at Marvel, but like Marvel stories, comic book type stories. It's not as deep as I think life really is. And I wanted to do kind of a superhero-esque story about this character named Myrgjol, but I wanted it to also be realistic, something you could read it and say, it's out there, but it is plausible. This is possible. This could really happen. And that was kind of the direction I went. But the genre ended up being classified by reviewers as historical fiction fantasy. So I'm good with that. It's historical fiction fantasy, but it does spill over into just about everything.
Well, there you go. And I have this philosophy that nothing in life is ever wasted. Any experience always contributes to where you are at. And it's amazing how you can use past experiences in, your current life. Now, you've worked in manufacturing your whole life. You're not formally trained as a writer. It's not your day job.
Correct.
How has your manufacturing background influenced your storytelling? And I also want to add to that, what advice would you give to any aspiring authors out there? And there are many who don't write because they don't have the formal training.
So part one of the question, the manufacturing, where that's come into play a lot is I have met a lot of different and interesting people in my many years of working in industry. People from everywhere, so I got to experience a lot of different cultures, and just how people are. They're just different. Everyone's different. There's little nicks and little quirks that people have. And I've been able to cherry pick all that experience with people and kind of plug it into characters. So it's made one heck of a range of characters in this book. There's 3 books out now, and there's all kinds of characters in all 3. I mean, some of them spill over into the next book, and then there's new ones all the time. There's tons of characters. And a lot of those interesting little personalities that I've plugged in there came from somebody I've known. So that's where that's come in. It's been just really eye-opening. A lot of times I wonder if I hadn't started writing sooner. I'm a little bit old now. So, I mean, if I'd have started writing sooner, where would I be? But I don't think I'd have been as good because I didn't have all that life experience yet. So I think it had to happen this way. And I'm glad it did happen this way.
Absolutely. Everything contributes to the whole. Now, your characters face numerous challenges. Is there a central message that you hope readers would take away from all these journeys that you have added into the stories?
I've been asked that before, and that's a hard one to answer. I hope somebody will, and some good message would come out of it. But as far as having written it, I didn't intend for there to be a specific message. I think it's just an entertaining story that I wrote, and I hope people like it and find it entertaining, and I hope awesome. I think it's awesome, but I'm a little biased. I wrote it, but I hope people really like it. It is, if you boil it down, it is a good versus evil. I mean, just about every story is like this. It's good versus evil, light versus dark. And of course, humans being humans, we want the light to come out on top. So I think that would be the only thing that I would say I maybe purposely planted, is rooting for the light. But as far as a specific thing, I think that's up to the reader. And I would love to hear from readers about what they found in it.
Well, nothing wrong with that. So if you are a current fan of Bjorn's books, let us know. Tell us.
Absolutely.
What do you like about it? What do you enjoy about it?
Like I like to say, I don't know how I'm doing if you don't tell me.
There we go. How do you approach your character development to make your characters relatable and memorable?
I think some of them are scene driven. If there's a specific scene or series of scenes in the book series itself, I try to envision what would be the best person to be in that scene, who should be front and center. And I start developing a character around that. But in most cases, like with Myrgjol, she sprang out the earth on her own. When I was telling you about, I saw the story about the Viking mound and all, and I started building her character. And I said, there's a story here. Now I've got to write it. So I started building the story around her character. So it's kind of a mix of both, because I've asked other authors that before, which one's first, setting or character? And it's the same answer every time. It's both. And that's pretty accurate. It's same with me.
Well, it's one reason I never get tired of talking to authors. I've been doing this for over 6 years, and every author's story and journey is so vastly, completely different. It's never the same. So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? Because that too is different for everyone. Do you have any routines or rituals that help you stay in character, stay focused when you're writing?
That's been quite an evolution for me as well. I'm still fairly new, obviously, at the fiction fantasy writing. The way I started out was mainly you could say was born of the technical writing background I had, where I had a strict outline and I had to stick to that strict outline. I couldn't deviate from that strict outline. Over time, as I went through the series of books and writing, it changed, where I realized I was strangling myself with that strict outline. So I had to make kind of a general outline, maybe some important pieces here and there I need to make sure I hit. And then the rest of it was creativity, just in the mood, whatever strikes in the mood. That's what goes on the page there. Now, at times, of course, I do have to obey rules. Some of the books they're not in chronological order on a normal timeline. So some of it, later books might have happened before the first two books. So or during the first two books. So I have to make sure I follow rules. Otherwise I start contradicting everything I already wrote, and I don't want to do that. So it's a mix of both things. It's still evolving. I'm sure if you were to ask me if, I'm invited back to your show happily in another year or so, 2 years, and I have more books out, I might have a completely different procedure. It is an evolution, but it's almost just depends on where I'm at in the story is how I'm going to approach it. But it's been very fun figuring this out for myself.
I'm sure. Very, 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 very interesting. Now, a lot of your stories hinge on history. There's a lot of historical aspects to it. So considering that, how big a role does research play in your writing journey?
It's a good question. I do find myself doing quite a bit. And now with the technologically advanced internet age, it makes it a whole lot easier than having to go find a library or find sources. Of course, you got to be careful what you trust as a source on the internet, but generally speaking, it's a lot easier. Most of the beginnings of the story, and a vast majority of the story, I would say, across all 5 books so far, was knowledge I've already picked up because I love history so much. I've always researched all kinds of stuff just for my own knowledge, just for my entertainment value. I would research, I'd see something on TV about a Roman villa somewhere. I'd say, I'm going to go check that out, and I'll start poking around just to see what it is. And ultimately, that'll lead to something else, which leads to something else. So a lot of it is just knowledge I already had an idea of, and maybe I had to go back and refresh some pointers about it, things that were a little fuzzy in my mind. I would have to go clarify that to myself. And some of it was brand new research, things I didn't know about yet. So being a history nerd like myself, it made it a lot easier to write historical fiction fantasy because it's already in there. I didn't have to do a lot of digging. So that was what really helped me too.
Well, I'm going to stay with the history for a minute. How do you find or create a balance between drawing on historical facts versus adding your own creative flair to the story?
Yeah, I know I spoke with another historical fiction writer recently, Miss Marie Powell. She writes similar story to mine. It's very different, but similar. I mean, it's in the same family group there. And hers is a lot more strict and to historical fact. Mine does play a little loose with some of the historical fact, I will admit, but it was done for the sake of the story, to make the story a lot more, make it pop a little bit more, make it more interesting. Now, I don't rewrite history though. I know a lot of people do like alternative histories where they take an historical event, but they will write their own ending, make it go completely different. I'm not quite to that point, but I do play a little loose with some of the facts that are out there just to make it fit into the story better. So I would never run around and claim this is a historical book that I've written and I've added some supernatural to it. It's a little looser than that. If that makes any sense the way I'm saying it.
No, it absolutely does. And, you've got to add your creative flair to make it a little bit interesting. Now, you created this Thalsparr Universe. Were there any challenges that you encountered, and how did you overcome it?
I don't think so. I think it came together really well. It rolled really well.
Nice.
The only real issues I think I had was I tried to get a little overcomplicated with a few aspects of the book, and some of I think the biggest struggles are the books that haven't even come out yet, or they're the ones that are finished, they just haven't been released yet. One character who we will meet late next year, early year after, in 2 books. She has a bit of a split personality. I don't want to say too much because it's a little more detailed than that, but she has a bit of a split personality. And I think I got a little overly involved in trying to make that a reality. I made it overcomplicated, I guess is what I'm getting at. So my editor kind of had to rein me in a little bit, and I did change some things, which is what they're for. So thank God. But that's really it. I mean, the rest of it just rolled really smooth. It was just really fun. I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Do you find, or do you have any creative ways that you engage with your readers?
Not specifically. No, I'm hoping to be doing that a lot in the future. I hope to actually start getting a fan following and have good discussions. I really do want to hear the discussions. I have several reviews, of course, but all of them have been really good. One was it wasn't bad. It was still a good rating, but it was a little more critical. And I appreciated that one, I think, more than the rest, just because it gave me an idea of what maybe I should work on. You know, what is it that you thought was wrong with it? I'm told, and then I'm like, okay, well, there may be some value to that. Maybe I'll look at what I'm doing in the future and try to straighten that little wrinkle out. So I look forward to it. I really do look forward to a lot of feedback on it.
Oh, that's awesome. In your opinion, if somebody had to ask you, a new aspiring author said, what makes a story truly compelling, how would you answer?
I think you have to believe it. I think it has to be something that's near and dear to you. That's the only way you're going to write it convincingly. I guess what I'm getting at is, if somebody wants to write a story, I'm just throwing a scenario out here. If someone wants to write a story with the sole object of, I want to have a blockbuster story that's going to make millions of dollars, and let's see what is it people like to read about. Okay, I'm going to write that. I don't think it's going to be successful. The feeling won't be there. The investment won't be there. So I think if you just find what's your passion, like with mine, it's everything. So, I mean, I wrote a story about everything. So, so if it's 2 things, pick those 2 things to write about them, pour your heart into it, put yourself into it. Don't shy away from, I guess, trying to not show vulnerability, maybe, because there's a lot of emotion in my book too. I'm a tough American guy, and I'm not supposed to show emotion, but the book is full. There's a lot of ups and downs in the book, and I let it come from my heart, so that's why I feel like it's very important about writing a book.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I always remind people, people can steal your ideas, but they can't steal your passion.
That's a fact.
So, if you write about something you're passionate about, no one can copy that. No one can steal your passion. Do you have a favorite scene or moment in your books that you feel particularly proud of? Like, yes, I nailed that.
Oh, you put me on the spot with that one. There are several. I think there are fewer that I felt like I had to put this in there for it to make sense, but I'm not really thrilled about it. There's far fewer of those than the ones I am super proud of. I can't answer that. I don't think so. I think all of them play a part. All of them. That's something I had to tell some readers, that the speed readers, I like to call them. Like, my wife is a speed reader. She likes to just blast through a book, and she read my book first, and I love her to death. Don't get me wrong, but she's probably my harshest critic on the story. She's has the worst opinion of the book, but it's because she reads so fast, she doesn't soak into details. And the way I've written mine, everything in it ties into something else. You can't just skip through stuff, or you will miss half the story.
You've got to read the details.
Right. So that's I guess that would be my advice. Yeah, I mean, you gotta read it, otherwise you'll miss half of it.
Yeah, no, I can well imagine that. What would you say your thoughts are on the current publishing landscape, or in your experience for indie authors?
I tried to go to the traditional route, like they always say you should. You know, I tried submitting to agents. I've tried submitting directly to the major publishing houses. To me, this is just my experience now. This might be different for other people, but to me, it seemed as though the author is swimming upstream to get anything done with his work or her work. And it's almost a full-time job just getting someone to represent you to get your work looked at by a publishing house. So it's ridiculously complicated. That's my opinion. That it's ridiculously complicated. So after a while, I said, I don't plan on spending 20 years trying to get this thing to even be looked at. So I went ahead and decided I'm going to just do it myself the best way I can. Now, admittedly, I dove in both feet with no knowledge, and the launch of the first two books that I tried to do myself was a fail. So I ended up hiring an editor firstly, made sure my manuscript was what it should be, because honestly, I'm an old school writer, so my formatting was not modern. I had to have my editor help me straighten that out. And then I hired, Creative Edge, of course, Nikki, and also Amy with Abundantly Social. And they gave me, well, they do it. I mean, they're the ones that market the book. They're the ones that put it out there. They know all that stuff about social media. I'm a little bit old school. I don't know as much. So I ended up going my own route. It is expensive. I know a lot of new authors would balk at the cost, but the thing is, how much do you want to do it? I mean, if you can't, you almost have to look at it as I'm paying for a hobby I really enjoy. That's kind of how I started approaching it, instead of I want to become a millionaire off this, because that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I enjoy it, and I hope other people enjoy it.
Well, I want to touch for a second on, not all authors initially see the benefit of having a publicist. And the way I usually explain it to people is, do you want to walk into a courtroom by yourself, or do you want to walk in with a lawyer by your side? Because it makes a difference.
That's a perfect analogy. You're absolutely correct. And I found that out myself. That is true.
It's a very different story if you walk into a library, for example, and say, hey, I've got this great book. Don't you want to put it on the shelf? Whereas, it's like you walk into the library and say, talk to my publicist. It just puts you on another level.
Right. That's true. Absolutely.
So there's great value in investing in yourself and investing in your author journey by finding the right publicist, because they're not all equal. Like with every other service, find a good publicist that's going to, be on your side, be on your team. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to ask you, what is next for you in your writing journey?
Okay.
Introducing Books with Bridgetti, a lineup of industry experts, award-winning authors, and talented indie authors. Books with Bridgetti.
Welcome back. We're talking to Bjorn Leesson about his journey as an author and his stories. So Bjorn, what is next for you in your writing journey?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I have five books completed. 1, 2, and 3 are out. This is all in the same series, the Outside the Thalsparr series. 4 and 5 will be out next year, or end of this year, or I'm sorry, next year, middle of next year, beginning of next year. And then 6 and 7 runes of spirits and runes of building are already finished. I just got to go through the editing process with my editor, and those will be out 2026 and 2027. I think I was just asked this in an interview recently about whether I was going to end the series, and at the time I said I don't know. I'm leaning towards, I think book 7 will probably be the last in the actual series, but I have several spinoffs of minor characters that were in the series that I think have their own story to tell. So it'll be their lives, but separate of Dokkrsdottir, Myrgjol the Dokkrsdottir. It'll be outside of that storyline. It'll just be what the challenges they face on their own. So the series will continue in a way, but it won't be Myrgjol's story anymore. I think Myrgjol's story is covered in 1 through 7, and I don't want to push it more and dilute her story, so I think that'll be it for that. But I will be writing several more in this series, or related to this series, spinoff novels. And after that, I will probably find another fresh idea. I don't know yet, but I will be writing. I just don't know what yet.
It's all part of the journey, right?
Absolutely.
If you had to go back now in time and start writing from the beginning, what advice would you give to yourself?
I'm not sure I changed anything. I think the way it's happened is the way it was meant to happen. I really enjoy it. I made mistakes. I tripped up. I did this. I did that. I wasted money on that. I mean, but it's all part of the learning experience. I don't think I changed anything. I think I would just let it go the same way it already has.
Great response. I like that. So if people have read your book, readers enjoy your book, what is the one thing you hope that they would remember about you and your storytelling?
I think just the realism. Like I say, it's the emotional range, and I've seen reviews that have backed this up on all the books. The emotional range of the characters is just from one end of the spectrum to the other. You go from in several parts of the story. My editor reminds me, she'll put comments when she sends back the manuscript that says, "I love how you do this." It'll go from heart-wrenching angst to bust out loud humor in 3 sentences, to break the tension. It's just the idea that it's realistic, it's relatable, and I've seen that also in reviews that people feel like, yes, this is a kind of a wild fantasy story, that this unusual Viking female warrior has these powers, and she's fighting armies of humans and non-humans, but I could still see her as being that lady I know from work. Yeah, I mean, it's just the idea that it's realistic, it's relatable. I think that's what I would like for people to think of when they hear Bjorn Leesson novel. Like, oh yeah, his stuff's really, I could really see myself in that story. That sort of mentality. That's I think where I go with. Yeah.
Bjorn, tell me a little bit about your book covers. And the reason why I ask this is because some authors have input into their covers, others just leave it to the publisher. Tell me a little bit about your book covers.
That's a good question. Like I said, these 2 books right on the screen right now are the first 2 books in the series. I attempted to do my own covers because I attempted to launch them myself. The first 2 covers that I made were, compared to these, they were awful. I'll just be honest. I failed. But when I hired Amy at Abundantly Social, she put me with Dina, who is with eBook Works. I might have butchered the company name. I'm sorry, Dina, but she did the book covers. We did collaborate a little bit. I said I would like to see a running theme that kind of connects them all together, and she did the rest. I mean, they're fabulous. I thought they couldn't have turned out any better. I love those 2 covers, but the first one is because most of the book one is set in the Viking Age. It shows the Drakkar, of course, and we went with purple because it just looked cool to have a purple background, and the full moon. Full moon carries through all the covers because I thought that was a good way to connect them all together. Or actually, Dina thought that. And the second book there you were showing, that's the airplane. That kind of signifies that we've changed setting a little bit. We are now in World War II, and I won't give away how that happens. But yeah, there's the entire series from beginning to end, and not necessarily in order in the books, but from beginning to end chronologically covers 1124 years. So there is a lot.
That's a lot of ground.
Yeah. There is a big gap of 900 years where I don't write about, but the rest of it comes out to almost 200 or 300 years of history that is actually being written about in the series. So it's pretty expansive. Now,
another thing I want to ask you about that's interesting about your book covers is the font. Did you have anything to do with that?
Actually, Dina found that it's a play off Old Norse runes, the Old Norse runic system. Futhark, Eldar, Futhark, Younger Futhark, and Stig. It's called. It's not in use well, it's kind of had a revival. People use it, but at the time it was used as that was the Norse version of writing. It's not quite as technical as modern languages we use now. It was a lot more interpretive, but that bounces off that styling. So yes, we can read it as English, but it's in the style of the old runic system that the Norse used.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I realized when I looked at the covers, I realized there has to be some significance to the use of that font, and it ties in very well, with your overall theme of the book.
Absolutely.
Now, we talked about how you have all these varied and different interesting interests, and one of the things you mentioned is that you also enjoy World of Warcraft and is the Azura's realm. Has that played any significant role or influenced your writing, and do you find any parallels between creating characters in your stories and the game, just for example?
No. I've played World of Warcraft since it came out.
That's just a chore.
Yeah, it's just something I do for fun. But yeah, it hasn't really influenced the books too much. Now the characters I have on the game are named after characters in my books. One didn't influence the other. It's just something I do for fun, but I've been doing it for years. I'm not particularly good at it, in case anybody runs across me on the game and asks me what I'm doing. I'm not particularly good at playing the game. I just like playing the game.
Well, we've all got to have something that we do just for fun, to relax your mind and so on. Bjorn, thank you so much. It was amazing getting to know you a little bit better and to hear a bit about the backstory of your journey of your writing. And we'd love to have you back on the show for your next book.
Oh, I'd love it. Thank you very much for having me. It's been really, really relaxed and fun. This is one of the better ones. Thank you.
It's a big pleasure, as I said to you before, we really enjoy talking to authors and just hearing their backstory. And it's one of the reasons why we started the show, because, these are the kind of things that readers don't get to know about you and your journey and your story. And doing shows like these, people get a little bit of insight into how the story came about. So thank you for sharing all that with us. It was a pleasure having you, and look forward to next time.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
To our audience today, I want to say thank you very much to you for joining us on Books with Bridgetti. It's been a pleasure having you join us. And if you enjoyed today's conversation with Bjorn, please do go and grab a copy of his books that are available on Amazon. And so until next time, keep reading, stay inspired, and remember, every story begins with a dream. Take care, everyone, and bye. Thank you for joining us on Books with Bridgetti. Join us next time for industry experts and award-winning authors.
I think this might be, I've been on over 24 different podcasts and radio shows in the last couple of months. And this has to be one of the most sophisticated, what the kids like to keep called bomb.com shows and presentations that I've ever been on. It's fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
Available wherever great books are sold near you.